Hey, it's Coach T. I'm back at the crack of dawn on another Sunday morning. Um, this week is my 8th week recording my journey to learn C Sharp over the course of the next year between July 2024 and July 2025. Now, I know that 52 weeks is not enough to really deeply learn any one programming language, probably, with maybe the exceptions of like HTML and CSS, which I'm also doing on the side. But I'm making steady progress, and this is not like this is not one of those massive jump forward weeks that I've had in the last 7 before this week, where I really started to grok with procedural programming, or I really started to understand, oh, this is what a void method is for, or here's how I write a method, or here's how I set up my own class. Instead, what I felt this week was the beginning of like the consolidation of everything that I've learned into object oriented programming, and really started to feel comfortable tackling problems that are with an object oriented solution. And I saw that expressed in a couple of different ways as I work through a number of different design problems. So if you follow my other devlogs, you know that I'm working through R.B. Whitaker's C Sharp Player's Handbook or Player's Guide to C Sharp, whatever that's called. I'm also working through the Learn.Microsoft course, which is going to give me a certification on Free Code Camp. And then, and probably primarily in the last couple weeks, I've really been working on Christina Sluzark's C Sharp Masterclass for 2024 via Udemy, which is this course right here. This one. So this Ultimate Masterclass for C Sharp. So this week I did accomplish my primary goal of finishing section 2 in the fundamentals by the end of the summer. This is the last Sunday that I have before our school year begins again, and I have to go back to work full time, which that sounds like a complaint, but it's not. I am ready to go back to doing instructional coaching. I'm missing working with my colleagues. I definitely miss the routine that I have because it's harder to motivate myself to go to the gym when I don't have to leave every day. It's harder to motivate myself to eat healthy when I'm at home every day. So there's definitely going to be a trade-off, and that's kind of actually what this whole week was about, was some trade-offs in how I was practicing C Sharp. So one of the trade-offs that I did do is I went back and I rebuilt the final section. Oh, I'm in basics objects this one. I went back and I rebuilt the dice roll game twice, and each time it got better and better. It was easier. I was able to implement using more of the object oriented design on my own. I don't know why those aren't checked off. That's interesting. I definitely watched them. But I went back and I really tried to make myself utilize the object oriented design principles that she had talked about, and really tried to fit in the idea that I should be planning around the separation of concerns when I'm designing the classes, when I'm designing methods, when I'm passing one thing into another, even down to where's my main method and how is my main method being called and how is it instantiating, if necessary, which it isn't necessary in some cases, classes. So I got comfortable, speaking of that, with writing static classes, static methods. Still a little bit iffy on when I should use a static property and when I shouldn't. But when it comes to static methods and static classes, I've done a lot of little micro game console apps that involve either static procedures or static items like dice or coins, things like that. I've probably written a dozen of them this week, just to really get comfortable with like being able to call my own static classes and to break down that mental barrier between, oh, this is a C Sharp feature like console.writeLine or console.read, so that I have like coin.flip, and it just always will give you a randomly generated, 1 or 2, 0 or 1, which was paying off. It really was, because the other thing that I did yesterday, and I had begun to research the chapter the day before that, is the Catacombs of the Class chapter in R.B. Whitaker's book, which is basically just a marathon of object-oriented programming mini projects and design projects. So, I went through, this is only 4 of the 8. I haven't finished it yet because I still have to write tic-tac-toe as an object-oriented program, and that is my project for this coming week, now that I'm going to have less time. I'm going to work on it today. I've got my CRC cards right here because that's part of the design requirement, is that I actually map it out physically, which I haven't done in the past, although I do tend to open up Notepad or keep notes or whatever, and that's where I had been doing it, but I'm going to try it his way and see how that goes. But I had to do, this is the point. I did the RGB one. This one actually threw me a little bit because, and here's where the static properties were a pain in the rear end. I knew I could build one like this, but I didn't think of this as a static property. For some reason in my head, I was thinking that this was like an expression-bodied method. And I know it's not looking at it because I've got a getter here, or I'm not returning anything. But in my head, there's still something there that's not entirely separate from a static method or an expression-bodied method. And that's just a matter of practice. Because 2 weeks ago, I hated properties and I did not understand them and I could not get my head around them. And then here I am. Now I was writing my own properties here for the RGB values. And I went a step beyond what Whitaker required. And I actually validate that the user puts in a value between 255, which is full, and 0, which is empty, with a 0 to 255 RGB color coding, which I've done a whole lot of playing with those color values as part of the design work on some of my other side projects. So I was like, oh, I know what this should be. I know what an invalid input should be. We're going to only accept a value if it falls into the appropriate range, and I'm actually going to do the hard coding of the setter rather than just using the defaults. Let's see. Do I have an example? Like this. This is a default. Public in X for the X coordinate, public in Y for the Y coordinate. I've gotten very used to doing those now, and I understand where the backing field is. I'm not sweating that, I can't see the field. I've gotten very comfortable with those. Or doing things like these ones where I declare the static property, it's a get, and then I immediately assign it values, or I instance the values, however you want to phrase that. So I've gotten very comfortable with that, and that's a big change over the last 2 weeks, but this is kind of an incremental consolidation progress week. So I did the card. The card was a breeze. I had to I had to set up a color array which had just these possible colors, and those are built on an enum that's somewhere down here. So I had to use enums, and then I had to write a method that basically is a for loop within a for loop, and a for each loop within a for each loop, I guess, in this case. And what that does is it spits out every possible combination of those cards, and it would print things off like the red 7, whatever, That one was very easy. I had a little bit more fun with this one, the door, which has 4 states: locked, unlocked, opened, and closed. And they're not exclusive states. So my solution to that was to ignore that very long case tree, was to have 2 different enums, open, close, locked, and unlocked. That way I could have them acting exclusively. And I could have done that with a bool, but I kind of like the more English syntax of seeing the actual status there, the noun state or the adjective status. So what I did with this one, and this was a lot of fun actually, was really enjoying the logical puzzle here, is you get a public passcode that gets set right away, gets set up right here, and it just parses that to an int. Looking at this now, I actually wrote a static method on Wednesday maybe that allows you to just console reader.int, and all it does is it just automatically parses anything that I put in as an int, or it returns a 0 and it prints off invalid. I should have imported that here because it would have been nice to add it over to my file solution, but whatever. I just noticed that. So basically you set a passcode, and then the door is locked and closed, and you get the opportunity to command it to see what do you want to do. And put a numeric code 1 2 3. What do you want to do? If I want to open the door, can't do that. Please unlock the door. If I want to unlock the door, and put the passcode 1 2 3. Now, if I want to change the passcode, I need to, input not recognized. Change code, that's what it is. So I need to input the current passcode, 456. Okay, now what I want to do, I want to lock it. Now I want to unlock it. 456, passcode accepted. And now I want to open the door, close, lock. It's basically, it's just a very simple interconnected system that relies on two states, more or less, to sort out what it can and can't do. And that's what's going on here. So I had a lot of fun working out the logic of when these different things can interact. But it wasn't super complicated. I did a password validator that built off this. That was the last of the actual micro projects in that chapter. And I don't have it here. I did it upstairs. That one was really interesting because there were like 6 kind of arbitrary requirements on how to design a password. So a lot of practice. I probably wrote, several thousand lines of C# this week. I did 6 or 7 micro projects. Really nothing to write home about though. Nothing groundbreaking. Nothing like football. That was kind of an all-consuming push for a couple of days to get that game working. But I'm really starting to understand at least the first steps in the object-oriented design process. So beginning by planning like what is good, what are my verbs, which is how I do game design, what are my nouns, which is largely also critical to my game design process, and then building on that and saying, all right, well, okay, here's what the player can do, here are the things that they can interact with. Now, in programming, what needs to be its own class? And that's not terribly different than saying, like, what needs to be its own chapter, what needs to be its own page, what needs to just be a graphic, right? So I'm beginning to feel some synchronicity between those different processes that I'm comfortable with. And that's fun. It's wind in my sails. It's not a huge gust of wind, but I'm comfortable knowing that when I slow down, because I'm going back to teaching and instructional coaching, when I slow down in the next 2-3 days, I'm not going to have the rug pulled out from under me and have this massive catastrophic landslide backwards. I'm feeling real comfortable with my fundamentals right now. And I'm looking forward to doing new things with classes like inheritance and polymorphism, which are coming up. They're on the other side of me finishing this OOP version of Tic-Tac-Toe. And I'm even looking forward to that project. I know I wrote Tic-Tac-Toe already. I demonstrated it here on the channel a couple weeks ago. But now I'm going to do it with classes. And I'm hoping that it's more organized because I think it was like 250 lines of code. And it was a little bit hard to read going back to look at it a couple days later. I was like, all right, I can kind of follow what's going on here. But the projects that I've written in with classes and with the 4 object-oriented principles that I've been introduced to so far, those projects are much easier for me to unpack and to manipulate than something like the procedural programming micro projects that I had worked on. So I think that's generally good news. I don't have a whole lot more to say. A little demonstration there, a little bit of progress. But again, these videos are really designed to be kind of a time capsule to myself in July 2025 when I look back and I say, what did you accomplish in those 52 weeks that you gave yourself? My goal is not to change my career. I like teaching. I am an instructional coach. I'm proud of the work that I do. I don't have a fire under my rear end to dive out of what is an established, steady career that challenges and engages me. I know I see a lot of other guys and a lot of other girls on YouTube that are like, I'm quitting everything and burning the ships. I'm moving on. I'm going to become a software engineer or a developer or a web designer or whatever. And I'm giving myself 6 months to do it, or else I don't know what else. I guess they starve to death. I have no idea. I'm not doing that. So, if I have to slow down, and I'm going to have to slow down, that's okay. But how far can we get in 52 weeks with, 6 to 8 hours of focused practice time a week, right? My hours in the evenings, or right now, like with my cinnamon coffee, my hour in the morning before the girls get up. How far can I get by being a dedicated autodidact? My intuition is I can get pretty far, because that's how I've learned a lot of other skills. This one's just more technical and more complicated than something like, layout or writing or 3D modeling. Those are all things that I can do, and I can do them well. But this has more of a cognitive load. So I don't know if I'll be able to jump as far ahead as fast, but that's okay because I'm not in a rush. My end goal is making applications for the people that I work with, and at the end of the day, my success is not contingent on my paycheck. My success will be contingent on whether or not people can use the tools that I build to make their lives easier and improve the instruction for our students. So that's it. A little bit of a recollection consolidation week. Next week will be slower for me. I have a feeling that the devlog will also be much shorter because I'll have less practice and my focus will be much more split. So we finished out the summer. We got 2 strong months of C# behind us. We've got 3 strong months of Python. I'm feeling pretty comfortable and confident that we can proceed even without, the 4 or 5 hours of split time, morning, afternoon, evening, that we've had throughout August. So I'll be back, I think, on Saturday. I think I'm going to switch the devlog day to Saturday because Sundays will get busy when we go back to doing some family stuff on Sunday mornings, and Sunday afternoons the Bills start playing next week, so I'm not going to be able to do it in the afternoon. So I think Saturday I should be back to talk about, maybe demonstrate my class-based tic-tac-toe, and maybe talking about inheritance if I get that far. We'll see. It's very hard to tell how quickly some of these concepts I pick up. Some of them, it's like that, and other ones, like properties and classes, I really spent like 10 days on them. So we'll see. And I'll see you next week. This is Coach T. Thanks for listening.